Wherever you are, whatever you find, whatever you believe will come in time. Everything you dream and hold dear, you believe to be true without favor or fear. Let it be so, may it grow. May your time be kind and slow. May you find the peace of mind we all hunger for, so. 'Cause I'd rather be here, than just about anywhere. Rather be here, right here, than just about anywhere. May you find your mountaintop, yeah, may you find that little stone. May you find your dreams, may it shine from sea to shining sea. We'll not break but bend while we need to mend. Yeah, we can fix it. Do whatever we can to get it back again. Use whatever's to hand. Get it back again. 'Cause I'd rather be here, than just about anywhere. Camp by a waterhole, went into its soul a flock of budgerigars to drink at that little billabong. Butcher bird sang his favorite song, and they were gone. But I'd rather be here, right here, than just about anywhere. Rather be here, than just about anywhere. I think that's the a bit of a prayer for naturalists, bird watchers, just about anybody who gazes on the natural world. Those moments, those sublime moments of being in the moment. Very hard to articulate. Firstly, welcome everyone, and welcome to the clan lands of the Peak Wurrong, who were the Port Fairy tribe, and the Payip Gilgunditj. And they were the clan of the greater Peak Wurrong language group that spread all the way to the Merai River and as far as Yambuk, who were again part of the greater Gunditjmara nation, or the Durud Wurrong nation. It's good to keep in mind that this country was observed, known and loved for every rock, every waterhole, every creature. And ice ages came and went while humans observed that. And you could walk to Tasmania, crossing a few creeks during the last ice age. What Peter and Chris have given us is a beautiful treasure trove of still points and observation and patience, time taken, time wasted productively, and those treasures are all gathered together into a beautiful ensemble in the book, for which we're all eternally grateful. Of course, from a purely selfish point of view, I would have preferred a big chapter on the Belfast Coastal Reserve and Port Fairy, but of course this district is featured, and living where we live in Killarney at the back of the sand dunes, not only all the incredible coastal bird life, but what goes on behind the dunes. And when people come to visit us, Teresa and I often say, they say, wow, you live in such a beautiful place. And I said, yeah, but it's in the middle of a flight path. And they go, oh, really? And I say, yeah, pelicans, kingfishers, swans. Last year, 7 Cape Barren geese, magpie geese, sometimes as many as 400, brolga, the occasional brolga, Jackie Winters, just on and on, like more than 100. Yeah, there are 354, is that right, endemic species in Australia? Am I right, Peter? 460. Yeah, and I reckon we've documented probably, between 150 and 200 just in our little wetland system in Killarney. So we consider that a bit of a hot spot too. It's extraordinary, the life of birds and what goes on in our little neighbourhood here. And I need tell you nothing that you don't already know about the importance of protecting those places that are under such threat all over the country and all over the world. Enough from me. Would you please make welcome the man whose eye and attention to detail captures these photographs in a single still image. Please make welcome Chris Farrell.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. It's quite an honour to follow Shane. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming today tonight for our launch, Port Fairy launch of Australia's Birdwatching Megaspots. I'm very privileged to actually now know Shane, and that's because in 2016, after doing one of the markets, I usually sell my images here. I had a phone call for a friend of mine told me there was floods out in Jambuck, so I decided that I'd use my skills of aerial photography, which I've been mastering over the years, to photograph the southern right whales off this beautiful coastline, and go up and photograph the floods. And I thought, look, here I am, people see me at the market, they see me selling photographs, and I thought, look, I want to show that I actually do care about this area, which I really strongly do. So I went up and I got these images so people could see if the floods were going to be coming into their property or whether they'd be, they're okay for now. And Marion Truman actually rang me and she wanted me to come and help document this beautiful location. So through that connection with Marion, I actually then met Shane and met Teresa and Bill and made this incredible network of friends in this beautiful region. And what they didn't realise, what Marion didn't realise when she did that phone call, was that I'd had this, I'd been doing aerials in this area for up to 20 years with film camera, and in 2011 I actually saw a pocket of coastline which I just couldn't comprehend how beautiful it was. I didn't know where it was, I didn't really know it was Killarney, and this image was just phenomenal. So every time I went along the coastline in a plane, I'd try to get another shot. Of course, you can never get the same image again because nature changes all the time. But from that meeting with Marion, it was actually interesting with Peter had also and I had met. We met at a Steve Parish workshop, and Peter and I hit off straight away because we both had this passion for wildlife. I was trying to master photography, wildlife photography, never expecting to be a writer. And Peter was encouraged me over the last few years to get involved in writing books. It was starting off just doing a few descriptions, but I never in a million years envisaged writing a book like this with Peter. It's been a real thrill. And because of this book I've been doing with Peter, it's actually it's helped me get back to on the ground, which my parents are very happy about me being on the ground and not in planes, because some of the planes I've been in and some of the situations have been a tad precarious. I've been up in storms with lightning. I've even been in a plane here once, and my pilot said, if we can see through the cloud, Chris, we can fly through the cloud. And I just got to a stage and said, nah, land. So that was the end of that trip. Very short trip that was. But look, Peter's been great. We've capsulated 55 birding megaspots in Australia. I said to Peter, but we have to have Killarney in there. So I convinced him to put Killarney in the book. But this area is very strong for the pelagics, and the pelagic means deep water, and that's Neil, who's here tonight. He actually takes people out to the outer reef, to the shelf, and that's where you can see a massive array of ocean-going birds. But anyway, I'll put you on to Peter now because I don't want to... He's the main orchestra of this book. I've been lucky to go along for the ride, so I'd introduce you to Peter Rowland.
Okay, I'm not as tall as Chris. So I have to take this off. Yeah, Shane, I apologise. You were right. 340-something endemic species. I was thinking of the number of birds that have been recorded in Victoria, sorry. So thanks, Chris. Yeah, it was lovely to get such a warm wrap. As Chris said, yeah, we met up at a photo masterclass up at the Sunshine Coast that was run by Steve Parish. And at that time, I'd already been formulating the idea for this book and hadn't found a publisher for it. So as luck would have it, and the link with the pelagic comes back, I went out on a Kiama pelagic for the first time, I think in November 2015, and sat next to a chap called Yong Ding Lee. Now, Ding Lee, he had just written the book on the birdwatching sites of Southeast Asia. So the 100 best birdwatching sites of Southeast Asia, which is now the 125 best birdwatching sites of Southeast Asia. And he introduced me to the publisher over at Oxford in England, John Beaufoy. And from there I went to him and said, look, I've been wanting to do this book for years. I've been wanting to put together something. All these travels I've been on, going around Australia, making notes, lots of lists and everything. I've been wanting to put this book together. And he's gone, okay, sounds great. He said, you used to work at the Australian Museum? And I said, yes. I said, in the bird department, the reptiles and mammal department. He's gone, oh, okay. Do you want to do a reptile book first? And I've gone, oh, I hadn't really thought about it, but okay, yeah, sure. And a mammal book. Okay, yeah, sure. So Chris and I worked on the reptile book first, and that was just a nice small introduction to about 290 species of reptile in Australia. And the mammal book was something very similar. But the deadline for the birdwatching megaspots, which was 12 months after we changed contracts, was looming pretty fast. So all of a sudden it was a bit of a panic to try and get all these notes and everything together and catch up with Chris at different times and go to different sites and get more pictures and everything else. And basically we ran out of time. And the publishers were very keen to get it all done and out before the British Bird Fair, the 30th anniversary that was held over at Rutland this year. So we really didn't have enough time to go to a couple of places we wanted to go to. So thankfully we had a few great photographers and some people that were pretty handy with the writing as well that sort of jumped on and went to Norfolk Island and Christmas Island and of course Macquarie Island, which was very difficult to get to anyway. So we had a few contributors in the book to help us along and help us meet that deadline. And they're written in the front of the book. Anyone who's seen a copy of the front of the book, so I can't remember all the names, so I won't leave anyone out by not saying any of them. So, but yeah, so I suppose I'll just go through quickly why Chris and I came up with the word Megsapots for the book. Now, anyone who's caught Chris's radio interviews recently would know that Australia is one of the 17 mega biodiversity places in the world, countries in the world. And those 17 countries group together to combine to have 70% of the world's described species. So we're very fortunate to have be on that list to start with and have such a great diversity. We've got 10% of the world's species described in Australia for bird species and for a lot of the other species as well. But 10% of the world's bird species have been recorded in Australia. So it is one of the world's mega biodiversity places. But the Megaspots was that most people like to call places that they go to for a lot of bird life hotspots. Now, I wanted to try and come up with something a little bit different. So it was an amalgamation of the mega diversity and the hotspots. And 55 just happened to come out with the right number of pages for the spread layout we wanted. So the fact that one or two might have been left out, which everyone's always going to have their favourites, but we went about it in a quantitative approach. We wanted the statistics to back up the justification for putting the place in the book. There are lots of places I've been to that I've had a fantastic day and seen first species of different things. So there are places that I've left out that I think that I would have put in if I'd thought about it emotionally. But my scientific background makes me a bit more, got to deal with the facts. And so we had to come up with places that would give you a large number of species in one area, not necessarily on one visit, because as you know, it could happen over several seasons or several visits over several years. But 200 was seemingly the magic number to have as a minimum, except for Tasmania, of course, which, you couldn't have 200 species in a single place there. But the other part was it had to have a large number of endemic species. So that started then whittling the list down a little bit. And funnily enough, 55 is where we landed. And 55 fitted in perfectly. And the publisher was grateful because he'd already been out to book fairs and launched it basically as an idea with the tag phrase of 55 best birdwatching sites in Australia. So it all worked out and made everyone happy. Now, probably just a little bit more on the relationship that I've had with Chris. He sells himself short a little bit, saying he didn't really contribute a lot to the book, but he did. He contributed a massive amount through contacts, through the photographs, through his written words, and through his enthusiasm. And I couldn't really wish for a better co-author, really, than Chris for enthusiasm, because anyone who knows Chris knows that, there's plenty of that. It's in bucketfuls. So I'd like to thank Chris for working on the project with me, and hopefully there'll be another one in the pipeline soon. So has anyone got any questions of Chris or myself about the book at all? Or can we start off with something? Yeah, can start.
One thing Peter didn't mention, just a couple of things. Well, the other thing about the Megaspots too is that we really aimed also for well-facilitated locations. So we're very conscious of bird ethics as well. So with the book, we actually had a part of a book on bird ethics, and we asked Goanna Maguire, who's the main manager of shorebirds along the whole of Australia actually, but she comes down here a lot. But that was very important. That it's one thing to actually send people off to these locations, but people, we want the birds, not just the people to enjoy the birds, we want the birds to enjoy coming to Australia or being in that location and staying around. So if people get a tad too close and chase the birds or whatever, that's not what we're about. So the book there is Megaspots, and someone did say, well, they won't be Megaspots if everyone goes there. Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage ecotourism. Ecotourism is very important for this country of ours. We might have a number of species, but we've also we're the fifth worst for extinctions of species in the world, and that we were first actually not that long ago. And someone actually corrected someone the other day and said we're actually now fifth, and we're not first. But to me, if we're in the first 100, that's a disgrace. So we really want to encourage people to visit these locations where they can have these incredible encounters by bird life, maybe get a nice photograph. But the most important thing is by encouraging the right people in a facilitated location that you're not encroaching on the environment. Western Treatment Plant is one of the locations in Victoria, and that's amazing. Is it? So there you go. So it's actually my aerial of the Western Treatment Plant, if it comes up or it's been up, it's bigger than Malta, the Western Treatment Plant. And Maureen has actually been there. She's actually knows how beautiful it is. I love the birds of prey there. There's nearly every bird of prey in there. But there's also blue-winged parrots. And I was very privileged to do a count with BirdLife and saw wild orange-bellied parrots this year. So we originally didn't have them for the book. I had to ask a friend of mine and who contributed, Jen Stevens. She contributed an orange-bellied parrot, and then Andrew Silcock of BirdLife actually provided us an image of the helmet-headed honeyeater, which is a symbol for Victoria, and also the swift parrot, of which I've also photographed after we got that photograph. So we did have a lot of contributors, but as Peter said, those contributors helped the book. A lot of those people said they couldn't write, and I said, well, I struggled to write as well. But Peter had a very good format. It was a really simple, just step-by-step format that we just filled in the blanks. And, we got great contributors that provided images of the iron range. One person who I've now become good friends with all these people because they're wonderful people, because we have that common interest. And he's been up to the iron range 30 times. And he finally got these incredible pictures of a palm cockatoo, which was in David Attenborough's Life of Birds, The Land of the Parrots it was. And it was showing how that the palm cockatoo it's the only parrot to be known to use a tool to wax the log. It's just to bring the mates in. So he'd actually been up so many trips, and he finally got these incredible pictures. So we're lucky to have that in the book. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask both the authors if they could tell us about when they first were aware of their enthusiasm for birds, when they first became aware of that enthusiasm within them.
Yeah, okay. Well, I reckon when I was born. I think that was when I might have been with me. But I love birds and wildlife since I was a kid. I was very lucky to live by the beach. And I've gone back to the beach. I live right on the beach. But look, my parents had that enthusiasm. My mother used to look after injured birds. They were not native at the time because we didn't have many native birds in the area, but little blackbirds or what have you. But I always had that love of birds, and I used to keep birds. I used to breed parrots when I was very young. It's wildlife was something across the board that I always had a passion for. I was very lucky to have an auntie in America that sent us National Geographics. So I always wanted to be a National Geographic photographer or get pictures. I actually wanted to get the big camera lens, but that's I still haven't got that lens. But I've managed to get some amazing photographs with other camera gear now. But the Worldwide Fund for Nature use my images all over the world now. I'm in the global library, which is phenomenal. So that's as Peter knows, I am persistent, but I haven't given up, but it was Steve Parrish that actually got me that enthusiasm to actually stick with wildlife, and I've been the richer for it ever since.
Okay, childhood, I can beat that. My great-grandfather, who I never met, was a wildlife photographer in Canada. And funnily enough, when I was very, very young, 4 or 5, something like that, I came across this old slide collection, and it was in a metal canister with all metal frames around the slides and everything like that. And I think it was the projector that fascinated me more than anything. But every time a picture of a bird came up, and whether it be because these are North American species, so painted buntings and cardinals and things like that, apparently I was really enthusiastic about it. I don't, I can remember the memory, but not the details. But so prior to that, my parents had given me the nickname Fred, which was actually his name as well. I would get a little Instamatic camera and I'd take pictures of birds in the back garden from either lying on the shed roof or through my bedroom window. And of course, they're little dots. You'd run down to the chemist and get everything developed and go, where is it? Where is it? Is that it? Yeah. From there, I sort of progressed to making nest boxes and going to the local woods over in the UK and hanging them up and getting great delight to go around every now and again and check them. So I think, it was in me. It was in me to start with. I can't remember any specific event that sort of said, okay, that's what I want to do. But later on in life, when I moved to Australia, I was actually born here, grew up in England, came back when I was 15 with my parents, and I did work experience at the Australian Museum in the bird department. And I don't know if people have done work experience for schools and things like that. It's always a case of, what do you want to do? It's like, I don't know, anything to do with wildlife. Well, national parks is gone, zoos gone, blah, blah, but we've got you a week in the Marine Zoology Department of Sydney University, and we've got you a week in the Australian Museum Bird Department. Well, the first week was sexing polychaete worms with a pipette, and that was riveting. And the second week was ripping apart dead birds, which was a little better. But of course, it was a wonderful place to work, and Walter Bowles, who was my boss, was a fantastic mentor, and he got me back doing volunteer work, and stayed there for about 23 years. So I've had a long interest. Actually, funnily enough, if you look at my CV, I'd probably be about 105 years old, because I'd work at the Australian Museum, and it says on the CV for 23 years, but I've actually worked in transport for 30, because every time the money ran out for the contract stuff at the museum, I'd have to go back and try and get a job, and of course transport was easy, so I went and did that, and so I did get paid, just not regularly. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm just curious about the hotspots in terms of diversity. The greatest ranges of diversity, and where those hotspots are. I know the Gulf of Carpentaria is an important migration place, but there must be spots, that are, like you said, the Western Treatment Plant. There must be places where there's a rich diversity.
Okay, Western Treatment Plant actually has the most species recorded to it in any place in Australia. Followed by, Australia's home to the world's second largest canyon after the Grand Canyon, and that's Kapiti Valley, which is halfway between basically the Blue Mountains and Mudgee, that area, in sort of, I suppose, central western New South Wales. But that's got about 340 species recorded there, 320 something. Again, I think it comes down to the places that have overlapping habitats definitely have the greatest diversity. Places like the Western Treatment Plant, of course, they've got a lot of migratory species, whereas Kapiti Valley has probably a lot more resident species. But it comes down to, so you've got some freshwater wetlands there, you've got some riverine systems, got some nice sclerophyll forests, got a fly buzzing around me. Other than that, actually, I just did a Buddhist course last week. I shouldn't do that. Come on, be my friend. But migratory species come in huge numbers, and of course we're very much attracted to those. So places like Broome have huge numbers, and I just was lucky enough to go up there again last April, just gone. It does just come down to suitable habitat, but my point basically is overlapping. You got any?
Anything else? Any other questions?
Sorry. I often get asked this in the gallery. What is your favourite bird, both of you? And if you can't name that, just give me a group of birds.
Well, I'm still in withdrawal symptoms that there's no parrot on the front cover, but I love turquoisine parrots, and Brett knows he's been up with me, and I'm going up again this week to see the turquoisines. I love the neophemas, the little neophemas, the orange-bellied parrots in that family. Orange-bellied, blue wings. I've been now twice over to South Australia to see elegance, but not get any images. Just this thing goes over like a dart. But yeah, I love parrots in general. I'll put that back to Pete now.
Finches for me, definitely. It's very hard to go past Gordian finch for probably, arguably, Australia's most striking bird. But definitely finches is the group that really, really intrigues me.
So I just wanted to follow on similar to Shane's question in terms of the areas where most interesting and perhaps profuse endemic birds that are unique to that place, unique to Australia and unique to certain places.
Okay, yeah, I think it's very hard to sort of single anything out, but I think Kapiti Valley would come back to the top of the list again for endemic species. But the wet tropics, obviously it's so unique. A lot of the species we get on the eastern seaboard and the southeast, obviously we get different subspecies maybe in different states, and they've got quite broad ranges. Because Australia's got such limited tropical rainforest, to go to a place like that and see the species that just are endemic to rainforests is something very special. So I would, if you wanted to see something different and see something that's going to stick in your memory, I would have to say that you go to a tropical rainforest or even a subtropical rainforest on the sort of southern Queensland or even a Dorrigo on the sort of northern New South Wales coast there, just to get those birds of paradise, your other bowerbird species and things like that, catbirds. Yeah, I mean, that sort of habitat for me it just stands out as something special.
But in what Marion's saying about the locations, I must say I am a bit biased a bit because I love this particular location. But the Belfast Coastal Reserve, Shane, it hasn't got the rainforests, but you've got the. I am a big lover of the surf and the water and the waves. I can lie on the beach. I can sleep on the beach, which I do. I used to do regularly after probably a bit longer night sometimes. But I do love the beach, and it's always drawn me. I love the oceans. The aerials I've taken along the reef here are just phenomenal, and the colours in the water are just incredible. But the reefs off the Belfast Coastal Reserve are just a huge array of feeding locations. I mean, even if you're not interested in birds along here, the fishing along here is great. I mean, there's so many little reefs there that are a haven for a lot of fishermen. I bumped into a guy on the point about 2 weeks ago, and I asked him, "Are you local?" And he goes, "Oh no, I haven't been here for 15 years." And it was just the most divine location. You had little hooded plovers, and you've got the sandlings have come over. How far do they travel, Pete, the sandlings?
12,000.
So 12,000 kilometres, and like it is a treasure trove, this area. You've got the blue-winged parrots, orange-bellied parrot. I did see one last year here. I know what that looks like, so I did see one. So they were here in larger numbers, but they haven't been. When I was a kid, I think they were only about 180, so they've always been a low number. They've also got a very short lifespan, although there is one that keeps on turning up to Melaleuca, and they reckon it's 8. But generally the lifespan of orange-bellied parrots is about 3 years in the wild, which is extremely very short, so that's why they're really highly endangered, or nearly extinct, unfortunately. But so you've got your birds of prey, which I love. So you've got swamp harriers, you've got your spotted harriers, you've got seagulls here. There's an osprey that's been backwards and forwards over the last few seasons here. But there's a lot of different bird life in that within the swamps, the grasslands, and then the ocean. So look, this is a treasure trove for this area, and that's why it is in the book as a must-see location. There also the Danger Point down at Portland is worth seeing. To see the gannets so close, it's the only land-based colony of gannets I think in the world. Or what the thing they've overpopulated Lawrence's Rocks, and they're now on the land, which is pretty amazing to see. And you call up the information centre. I have got the number to one of the caretakers, but they take you out. You're really close, and there's these incredible birds. We saw them all taking off at once, and it was amazing to see them. So there's those two locations plus the pelagics, but then there's Tower Hill. I mean, I will have to do a count on that. But the book at the moment, we've got 55 megaspots. But as the climate changes, which is going to happen, and as things change over time, we'll probably include new locations. So hopefully we'll get in. The Belfast Coastal Reserve will get in there. Shane will get in it. We'll get there. I'll have to get those numbers of those. We'll have to get those numbers you told us. If that, I'm going to convince Peter that's going back in next edition, because we're almost sold out. So I'm going to make sure it's in. But like things will change. Like people ask me, why isn't so and so in there? Well, it's not in there at the moment. But I said how hard it is for me to write. I say struggle. I'm never going to let it defeat me. I'll keep on going. But I declared after this book I'll never do another book again. And within a month I said, Pete, what are we doing next? So I'm a total glutton for punishment.
You actually said it a month before we actually finished it. And actually, I had a brain snap. One place I should have mentioned was Tasmania, of course. If you want a high number of endemic species, then going to somewhere like Bruny Island is a must, an absolute must. I went to Maria Island, then Bruny Island, missed the ferry, unfortunately, so missed out on one night there. But in I was there for one night, so in 1.5 days, I saw all except the 40-spotted pardalote on Bruny Island. So you can see all of the endemic species in Tasmania, Tasmanian endemics, at Bruny Island in a very short space of time. So that's definitely a place.
So who have you actually written the book for? Is it for mad twitchers or overseas people or just anybody?
I really wanted to make it a... mad twitchers I don't think would buy it. It's not information... Well, it probably is information with the GPS coordinates that would make things easy. But I think your mad twitchers have basically got a swag on their list already, and they chase the rare vagrants and the really hard-to-get species, like up at Mitchell River and places like that, which is very hard to get to. So no, I wanted to make it very much a tourism book for bird enthusiasts, which is why we put some accommodation in and some tour operators and try to travelling, getting to and from places, what permits they might need. So I'm trying to make it an enjoyable experience for people that probably aren't quite as knowledgeable in the field as the real enthusiasts, but still keen to get out and see as much as they can. So yeah, definitely the traveller.
Just adding to what Peter said, I've actually also told people that if you're not you don't have to be interested in birds at all, because we've got the GPS coordinates, and there's another a place not far from here. There's amazing locations which I didn't know about until I was doing the book, and I got involved in some friends of mine that have to see certain species and they have to count them off, and I go out with them on a regular basis. But one of the places is not far from here. It's about 2.5 hours from here, which is not far. Is Gosham, and Gosham is a township which never got developed. And when people were telling me that the budgies and the cockatiels were on the tennis court, I thought they were lost the plot. And when I get there is a tennis court, and there is a shed, and there's a lot of rare arid birds that end up at Gosham at certain times of year. So I've been up there, black honeyeaters. I haven't seen the cockatiels and the budgies yet, but there is amazing little pockets in Victoria that I found via the twitchers. but we haven't. I think there's a lot of interesting places in general. I think the fact that the GPS coordinates gives you the opportunity to get to the place and spend more time there. So there's a lot of other wildlife there. You don't have to be interested in birds. There's a lot of reptiles, a lot of mammals in these different locations because they have got the diversity in the habitat. So I think it's focused at people that just want to get out there anyway, and then maybe we can convince them to like birds as well and protect. That's the most important thing, is getting people more aware of the environment they're in and we've got real treasures in Australia. So we'll add as we go with the book. This is this book, but in the future editions, which of course we'll do, hopefully. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's just for bird watchers.
It's not exactly about the book, but it's just got a question. I've got a question about birds locally. We seem to have lost recently a lot of the owls, and you just seem to see dead owls everywhere. I found one in my backyard. I found two in the same day down at Martin's Point, down on the beach there. You see them on the road all the time. And I've heard that it's due to rat poison and mouse poison. Is that correct?
I haven't read any studies on it, but that is definitely the popular consensus, that because they're a higher predator, they accumulate the pesticides, the toxins in their system. Whether it leads to impairment or lack of judgment, that sort of thing, that they become a bit more unaware of their surroundings and maybe sort of swoop down into headlights of cars or whatever. But yeah, I think without knowing the scientific facts behind it, definitely that would have a massive impact on the health of those sorts of predators.
Because of the increase, I think also too, because of the increase, there was a lot of rodents this year as well, and because when there's an increased food source, they've obviously eaten a lot of rodents, and of course a lot of the rodents would have had pesticides in them. Or just purely lack of food after they're bred up. There's a very rare bird of prey, the leatherwing kite, that it's been seen. It's mainly in arid Australia, and it has been seen in Portland, and it has been seen, I think, at the Western Treatment Plant. It's been as far down as that, which is 300 k, more than 300, probably 1,000 k's out of its range. And it comes down to, what rat is it?
Long-haired rat.
Long-haired rat. Make sure I get that right. Long-haired rat. So once they breed, like us, as it breeds up because of the food source, then there's an unfortunate problem that they do die back. There's Lake Eyre. There was the population of pelicans. When Lake Eyre fills, there was it filled and it improved. I think it was maybe 2016 or 2017. It increased in size so many different times, and the pelicans bred up to a phenomenal number, and they kept on breeding, and the carnage of the death of when they dried up was phenomenal. I don't know how many died, but thousands.
Anyone else? Yep.
Are you able to tell us about what you think are the most unusual observations that you've had of birds?
You got one? Good.
Look, the thing about birds, it's just watching them, and you see different things. Now, I'll give you two cases. I was coming back one weekend from one of my markets, and it was a big quiet day, and I had the great pleasure of watching or more than two. They were all playing. Corellas play. They on their backs. They roll backwards and forwards, and they were playing, unfortunately, with plastic bags, which is not good. It's not a good symbol for plastic bags. But I was watching them playing and literally pulling a plastic bag over their head, and it was amazing seeing that. And the other thing is watching birds attack sea eagles. So part of the book, I went down to Malakuta, and I had the great pleasure of having this charter boat that actually I had full access to the roof. You normally wouldn't be up on the roof, but I was up on the roof. And mind you, I just had an injection in my shoulder. I wasn't supposed to lift my lens, and I was only going to take pictures of scenery and no wildlife photography. And there I am with my big 600mm lens, taking pictures of seagulls getting attacked by. I've got pictures of whistling kites, currawongs, ravens attacking it all after. I've got pictures of 3 attacking it, and then there's Caspian tern, and that was the most phenomenal thing. Caspian terns they're quite large terns, but here's this Caspian tern attacking a seagull, and I've actually watching a seagull flip upside down. I've got the images of it with its talons up, and the seagull and the Caspian tern's having a go at it. So watching such small birds attach such a huge bird of prey is phenomenal. So there's some of the things. The playing of parrots is phenomenal, especially corellas. Just watching them is just hilarious, just constant entertainment. But watching little birds attack big birds of prey, I'd say would be pretty amazing.
Probably the only thing I can think of as far as unusual is just the rare vagrants that I've had the chance to see in Australia. That the one that springs to mind is the white rump sandpiper that it turned up in at Lake Conjola, which is on the New South Wales south coast. And I had been away camping with family and went to pick the dog up from my parents, and my mum said, "Have you seen the rare wader," she said, "at the Western Treatment Plant?" Western Treatment Plant at Lake Conjola. And I said, no. And she said, "Oh yeah, it's been there for a week or something." I've gone, "Oh yeah, okay, well, we'll swing by there on the way home." And of course, swung by, couldn't find it. Drove home, came down, and the following Saturday, and there were a few birders from Melbourne that had driven up, a few had driven down from Brisbane to get a glimpse of this bird. And of course, I turned up, wandered across the beach, and where is it? Oh, it's just flown off. And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." So I stood there for an hour or something, and it didn't come back. And anyway, it was until the end of January. So that I started looking for it at the beginning of January. At the end of January, on the 28th, I was driving home again from my parents' house because it was Mum's birthday, and I called in. I thought I'll have a look, and it was blowing a gale, and there was no one on the beach. And I walked down the beach, and there it was, huddled in a little sand scrape, sheltering from the wind. And I just sat there about 20 or 30 metres away, and just sat and watched it for about half an hour after a month of looking for it and finally finding it. Yeah, it was just wonderful just to watch it. So
I'll tell you a funny story because I find this amusing. Back in film days, I was at Lennox Head, and I just got there. And the first day, I was down the beach, and there's an osprey, and my smile's there, thinking that people would love to get a picture of this, and got me a camera, and 1, 2, whatever, 3, got to 4, I got to 36, and I got to 37, and I'm thinking, 38, I was worried. 39, I was extremely panicking. And 40, open the camera and there's no film. So I spent the next 7 weeks, and I got extremely bad cases of sunburn. And at the end of the day, I never got it. So the last day, I wasn't going to walk up the 7 Mile Beach anymore, and it landed in front with a fish, and I thought that'd be right. So 30 years later, when I met Peter, I was driving down the coast, and I was at Ballina, and this osprey, I reckon it's the same one, it flew past the car park. I saw it, and I thought, "Oh my God." So I get out of the car, and I hardly ever delete my cards, but I deleted the card straight away. I've backed it up, don't need to get that card. And there's this osprey, and it was flying parallel with me, and I just outside the 2 metre range, and I was banging away, and this woman goes, "That bird's posing for you." And I thought, you know what, it's probably the same one thinking, "You idiot, make sure you get the image," which I did.
Very good. No more? Okay. Well, remiss of me earlier, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Shane for introducing us and delighting us with a song. Blarney Books, of course, for hosting the event. It's very, very much appreciated. I wish I had a Blarney Books closer to home, and everyone who's supported us with the book and buying a book, it's very, very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Now the wonderful Shane Howard will sing another song, I think. Is that right? Oh. No, thanks, Joe, as well, and thank you, Dean. Sorry, I forgot it. There you go.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay.
I'm sure you'd all join with me in really, well, not only thanking the creation of the book, but also there's an enormous amount of patience involved. I've seen Chris. I've only met Peter tonight, but I've seen Chris at work in our front yard at Killarney, out photographing birds, and it's probably a form of madness. Would you say?
Especially lying in the mud, trying to photograph waders. In fact, at the cutting down here, I was photographing waders the other day, and I thought, you know what, it would have been a good idea, considering I have got the wet weather pants and the wet weather coat, to put them on before lying on the entrance of the cutting and knowing that I'm getting drenched. And yes, very wet and very silly, but that's it, Shane. Otherwise, you can't get the images.
Absolutely, yeah. And the patience to bring us those images, and watching that at work is pretty amazing. Some fascinating, talking about fascinating bird stories. If I could share a couple of my own. I remember one time at Aeroglen in Cairns, not that far from the airport in Cairns, out in a little shack that some people had, visiting them. And we were sitting in the kitchen, and out of the bush, which is, as the hills go back up there, all of a sudden a cassowary walked into the kitchen. And a cassowary is a pretty disturbing thing because they can rip you clean open with one stroke of their leg. And another time being in Broome, fishing up north of Broome with Steve Pigram, and of course the first thing you do when you catch a fish is the Brahminy kites are always flying around, and you have to offer the first fish to the Brahminy kite. And Steve, they'll call them in, and then you throw it into the air, and the Brahminy kite will swoop and grab it. And another extraordinary time, a mate of mine, Steve Cooney, was out from Ireland, and a brilliant musician, Australian, who's gone to live in Ireland, and he'd done a recording, and the very last track of the album was a recording of the Irish lark, which I think is all but gone from Ireland now. And a lot of people say that that's where the Irish tunes originally came from. And we were in Byron Bay. Steve was in Australia with friends, and while Steve was playing the recording of the Irish lark round about sunrise, because we'd been up all night, because that's what crazy musicians do, there was a butcher bird just outside. And the most bizarre thing happened. The butcher bird started mimicking and responding to the recording of the Irish lark. It was one of the most... And we were all there. We all witnessed it together, so we weren't mad. But that was an extraordinary thing.
You sure? You sure?
Sure about the bird, or sure about our madness? Yeah, so thank you so much for making the effort to put that energy into the book, and for your patient observation and over decades, really, to bring us all these treasures that we can just rifle through or flick through. And thanks for coming down and sharing it with us here in Port Fairy at Blarney Books.
Thank you.